The Game of Faith was the most important period in English calendar from 1095 to 1291. People in England. The Crusades are important today because they slowed advance of Islamic power and prevented Western Europe from falling under Muslim possession. Extended trade with the Muslim world, bringing new tastes and foods to Europe. Had an impact on areas such as trade, finance, architecture and science. Continue to be studied for their influence on memory, memorialization, interfaith relations, identity and gender. Altogether there were 9 crusades that began in 1095. Beginning in 1095 CE, the crusades saw European knights and noblemen travel to the Middle East in an attempt to capture the Holy Land away from Muslim people that had controlled the region for the previous centuries. The term crusade means cross, therefore, the Europeans that became crusaders viewed themselves as taking up the cross. In fact, many of the crusaders wore crosses on their clothing and armor as they made their pilgrimage to the Holy Land. The First Crusade was a major military expedition of European crusaders to the Muslim-held lands in the Middle East from 1096 CE to 1099 CE. The Second Crusade occurred from 1147 until 1149 CE and was carried out in response to the fall of the county of Edessa to Turkish forces. The fall of Edessa in 1144 caused Pope Eugene III to call for another crusade in order to recapture the territory, but also as a general call to protect Christian lands in the Middle East. Pope Eugene III called for the crusade on the 1st of December of 1145 and wanted it to be led by some of most power kings in Europe at the time. Louis VII of France participated in the Second Crusade and announced his intention to do so in late December of 1145. Conrad III of Germany joined him and both led approximately 35,000 crusaders, 20,000 Germans and 15,000 French during the Second Crusade. The Third Crusade was sparked by a few events. Firstly, the failure of the Second Crusade in 1148 left a lasting impression in Europe and caused many to want to return to the Holy Land and fight for control of the territory. Secondly, the capture of Jerusalem by Saladin in 1187 was the immediate cause of the Third Crusade. Fifth Crusade was caused by the earlier failure of the European Crusaders to capture the city of Jerusalem. The Sixth Crusade took place from 1228 to 1229 CE and was an event in the history of the Crusades. Seventh Crusade was undertaken by King Louis IX of France, in his attempt to recapture Jerusalem from Muslim control. In fact, Louis IX was responsible for both the Seventh Crusade. Eighth Crusades were undertaken by King Louis IX of France in his attempt to recapture parts of the Holy Land from Muslim control. The Ninth Crusade was carried out by Lord Edward of England, who later became King Edward I of England. Lord Edward was inspired to fight in the Eighth Crusade and took the cross on the 24th of June in 1268. Lord Edward left Dover, England by ship on the 20th of August in 1270, with the intent of meeting the French king, Louis IX at Tunis. However, when Lord Edward arrived in Tunis on the 10th of November, he realized that the Eighth Crusade was over. As stated above, this was caused by the death of Louis IX in August of 1270 due to the spread of disease throughout the ranks of the French Crusaders. The Crusades were a series of religious wars initiated, supported and sometimes directed by the Christian Latin Church. The best known of these military expeditions are those to the Holy Land between 1095 and 1291 that had the objective of reconquering Jerusalem and its surrounding area from Muslim rule after the region had been conquered by the Rashidun Caliphate centuries earlier.